I have built two versions of my dream game, a prototype and a complete reboot, but something still fell off. The mechanics weren't quite there yet, but I knew I was getting close. Last devlog, I mentioned Card Wars, a fictional card game from the Adventure Time universe. There's a YouTuber called Big Holes, yes, really, who's developing a faithful adaptation of Card Wars. I obsessively rewatch his videos so many times to keep myself in the game design headspace when thinking about this project. I swear I could quote some of his lines from memory. But back to my game. I realized that unit recruitment was still busted. There are several major mechanics that units can be designed around, but when you recruit a new unit, you only choose from a pool of 3. How are you supposed to pursue a set strategy, let's say aggressive combat, if you keep getting bad rolls on your unit options? That's just frustrating. So, I implemented glyphs. Glyphs are symbols on a tile that determine which pool of units you choose from for recruitment. Each glyph corresponds to a major mechanic that a unit may be designed around. Units can be represented by either 1 or 2 glyphs. The tile you choose a glyph from also becomes the unit's spawn point. If you decide you'd like to focus on combat, select a combat glyph tile to spawn your next unit on. If you need to harvest more resources from the forests, select a nature glyph tile instead. I also struggled to balance the auction mechanic. It was difficult to come up with many auction prizes that were all around the same power level. If you won the auction, then you'd have access to every prize. Why not just go for the most powerful option available every single time? I would like to implement an artifact that gives you an extra option when recruiting a unit, but that gives the player meta power for just winning a single auction. That's too much. So in order to balance this, I came up with auction chips. Any player who wins an auction receives an auction chip, and artifacts cost auction chips. Players can choose to trade in their 1 chip immediately for an artifact, or save up chips from multiple auctions for stronger artifacts in the future, just like the one that gives you an extra unit option for recruitment. Units from the trade glyph excel at generating gold and auction points to help you win auctions. I wanted some counterpart to artifacts that was themed after religions or spirit worship, so I invented patrons and favor. Patrons are local spirits that your units can interact with to gain their favor. The player who gains the most favor with a patron gets some benefit over the surrounding area, the domain. Units from the worship glyph excel at generating favor with a patron. After implementing these mechanical changes, I did a laundry list of small upgrades. Improved fonts in the menu system, model previews in the unit recruitment menu, game select menu, a day-night cycle, saving and loading mid-game with the cryo library, implemented audio, allowed mods to define their own resources such as audio and textures in 3D models. Just a whole bunch of small stuff that goes into creating such a complex game. I was a little intimidated by this next part because I have very little experience with advanced shader logic. I knew shader logic could add details on top of model textures, so I planned to implement several features at the shader level. And once I got the hang of it, it actually became super fun. First off, I displayed faintly glowing glyph symbols on tiles with glyphs. This way, the player can see which tiles can spawn which glyph units at a glance of the world map. Then, I also made the texture on top of water tiles rock back and forth to simulate waves. I also finally re-implemented Fog of War using the shader. This was much easier back in the 2D prototype because the sprites didn't stick out from their tiles, and I render each tile iteratively. In libgdx, however, we use batch processing to render everything. So here's how it works. Units and buildings store which coordinates they can currently see, and tiles store how many objects currently have vision on them. These values get updated whenever an object is spawned, despawned or moves. A tile's number of vision points is passed into the shader, which then either paints everything black if it's never had vision points, or darkens the tile if it only has 0 points right now. I also exclude unit and building models from the batch processing if the tile they're on has 0 vision points. Finally, I implemented player borders on the world map using shader logic. This was probably the most fun I had writing a feature with shaders. Each tile calculates which of its 6 sides are adjacent to a tile under another player's control. The calculation returns 6 Boolean values that I pack into a single byte. This byte represents a number between 0 and 63 inclusive. This number then gets passed into the shader, which displays a border on any of the 6 sides described by that number. I made this optimal by creating only 2 border assets, one straight line and one slanted line. The shader can flip these 2 lines to cover all 6 sides of the hexagonal tile. I had a bit of trouble debugging this at first. What the hell? But soon found my mistake and had a perfectly working system. Finally, I built a mini-map and a world generation algorithm. I've been writing world gen algorithms since high school, so it didn't take long for me to implement this one. I established random biome seeds around the map, then fill in every tile with the biome of its closest seed. This creates nice shapes that I like to look at zoomed out. Then, after every tile is filled in, I can establish buildings around the map and their appropriate biomes. Next up was the minimap. This was trickier than world generation since I had to sync it up with the Fog of War system, but after some fiddling I got it to work. I had turned off the Fog of War in development and felt really inspired seeing these maps come to life. So much so that I made some new unit models. Say hello to Golem of the Grotto, King Gargantos, Pumpkin Boy, and Gloop the Adventurer. I did some playtesting and found it feels great. I am so excited and feeling more motivated than ever to finish this game. And good thing too, because the next system I have to build is something that I have been putting off for so long. Enemy AI. But that's a video for another time. Stick around if you'd like to follow this project. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.